So good morning, everybody. Thank you. People know me. I like to get some feedback. I like to hear people speak back to me. I'm just going to do just a couple of housekeeping things before we start. There has been, unfortunately, an accident on the M6. Not unusual, I have to say, for Birmingham. But it might mean that people are coming in late, which is why we've started a little bit late, to try and give people a chance to get in and park. We're not expecting any alarms, so if there is any fire alarms, the nurses amongst you, it's real, move. Don't just go, is that the alarm? If you can turn your mobiles off, that would be very welcome, and any other things that make noises. Anybody who's not registered, we know who you are because you haven't got a sticky label on. So I'm under strict instructions to say, please make sure that you're registered so we know who's here and what's happened. For those of you who don't know who I am, not that you should expect to know who I am, my name is Rosmore and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer for Scotland. For those of you who don't know what a Chief Nursing Officer is, I advise Scottish Government on all aspects, anything to do with nursing, midwifery and the allied health professions, plus a range of other things that I won't bore you with. But I'm also the Chief Nurse for the NHS in Scotland, and the NHS in Scotland, you're probably aware, or you may not be, is a totally integrated service, so it's a great privilege to have that role. And I'll tell you a little bit about why me and why today as I go on just in the next couple of minutes. This is a Paperclip challenge event, and according to the academic Wikipedia, this morning at 5 o'clock, it was started by a guy called Kyle MacDonald, I think, in Vancouver, and he traded up a paperclip eventually to a house by a series of trades that increased in value along the way, but it was taken up as an example of how you can do a lot through will, determination, and getting people on board. Martin Luther King, who we've celebrated his life over the last few months, had a word that he said, that social change only comes about by togetherness, and that togetherness is actually something we should pursue and generate in a very active way, a sense of togetherness. And I think today represents that togetherness, and that it's all about people from all different backgrounds, all different stakeholders in the world of learning disability, nursing and learning disability care, coming together to put their piece into that jigsaw, and together creating something more than we could have ever created on our own. My absolute admiration goes out to Sean and the people who've done this. I think it's phenomenal. So this is part of our strengthening the commitment, and our history, I suppose strengthening the commitment's history starts way back, and this is a picture of Lennox Castle in Glasgow, and as you can see, this massive estate was where people with a learning disability lived not many years ago in healthcare terms, on a very isolated, very large country estate, with people who lived and worked in that estate. And the people with the white coats on are the nurses in that. And as a result of a series of reviews that are listed there, our whole attitude to the care of people with learning disability went through a terrific transformation from the Lennox Castle period. A period of change that recognised that learning disabilities is not a condition or a health problem, it's part of who you are. And therefore, it's not about treatment or interventions or drugs or those sorts of things, medical care. It is about enabling people to maximise their lives, their contribution within the limitations imposed by that learning disability. And that led to a whole shift, as you all know better than I, away from a medical model of caring for people with learning disabilities to a social model. When we got to 2006, that social model of learning disability care was absolutely established across all 4 areas of the UK. But it had begun to ask questions about the future and role and contribution of learning disability nursing in that different and changed model. So we, as part of Modernising Nursing Careers in 2006, asked the NMC to do a review of pre-registration nurse education, and one of the questions was around the fields of practice, or what was originally called the branches of nursing. Did we still need these 4 branches of nursing? What we got back from that was a wholesale commitment to the need for that unique field of practice within nursing that is about the care and support of people living with a learning disability, their families and their carers. We are unique, as you probably know, in terms of the UK, not the UK is unique in terms of Europe and indeed the United States and North America in general, where learning disability nursing isn't a field of practice in its own right. But we recommitted professionally to that in 2006. I came into post in Scotland in 2010 and looked at where we were. What did it look like in Scotland? What was the state of nursing in Scotland? I was faced with a situation where we had fewer providers of learning disability nursing. We had fewer learning disability nurses in general. I had learning disability nurses who were struggling to articulate their identity in this new world. I had a government that was very committed to learning disability care in general, so I inherited 2 fantastic strategies that I was able to build on. So there was clearly the commitment. But what those strategies told us was that obviously people with learning disabilities live much longer than ever they did before. Fantastic. We have children that live and begin to get into teenage years or young adulthood that in previous years wouldn't have had the opportunity to live. Yet the numbers of learning disability nurses themselves and the provision and indeed the workforce planning around that group was nil. Now that sounds all stuff, workforce planning, there's nothing more boring, is there? But actually if you don't have workforce planning, if you haven't got somebody actually driving that from the top saying actually we do need these people, then it doesn't happen. So I was able, with my colleagues across the UK, the other 3 CNOs as it was at that particular time, because England had not gone through its reformation, we agreed that we would review learning disability nursing. It hadn't been done for many years, and we would. And that we would do it across the UK, and that we would implement it across the UK. And hence we've got strengthening the commitment. And this is just one of the products of strengthening the commitment. It has various recommendations in it, which you'll be able to read around education, training, development, workforce planning, practice, becoming more outcomes-based. But there has been a great deal of work around leadership, and a number of the people here today have been generating that new generation of leaders, and also generating that sense of togetherness that we need to make sure that learning disability nursing continues to grow, continues to thrive, and continues to make the contribution it always has, and that the values that define and characterise it remain. I think those characteristics of learning disability nursing and indeed all people who care for people with learning disabilities and people with learning disabilities themselves, are almost characterised by the idea of a paperclip challenge. They're resourceful. You are resourceful, creative, you're brave, and you're risk-taking. You're willing to share what you've got in terms of resources and willing to share what you've got in terms of learning. But most of all, you're totally committed to the people that you serve, and it is their interests, I know, that drives you to be here today, not anything else, not your own careers or your own development. I speak as an adult nurse adopted by the learning disability community according to Helen Lafferty. So I'm not a learning disability nurse, but I share with you those characteristics, I share with you that belief, and it's my great pleasure to be here today, to host today.